billionaire took a blind date on vacation. The woman who showed up left him, speechless. When tech billionaire Marcus Way agreed to a blind date vacation arranged by his grandmother, he expected a social climber seeking his fortune. What he didn't expect was Sarah Chen, a widowed single mother who showed up in borrowed clothes with calloused hands and tears in her eyes, asking if she could bring the leftovers home to her sick daughter. What happened next on that private island would change both their lives forever. But the real shock came when Marcus discovered who Sarah's late husband really was, and why his own company's name was written in a child's medical journal. This is a story about dignity, hidden connections, and how one act of desperate honesty can unlock doors you never knew existed. Sarah Chen gripped the armrest of the private jet seat so tightly her knuckles turned white. The cream-colored leather beneath her felt like it cost more than her monthly rent. Through the large oval window, clouds drifted past like cotton, and somewhere below, the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly toward a destination she could barely believe she was heading to. "More champagne, ma'am." A flight attendant appeared beside her with a practiced smile and a crystal bottle. "No, thank you," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle hum of the engines. She still had half a glass sitting untouched on the polished wood table before her. She wasn't used to champagne. She wasn't used to any of this. 3 days ago, her life had been completely different. 3 days ago, she'd been standing in her small kitchen in Queens, staring at another stack of medical bills, wondering how she'd make next month's rent while her 7-year-old daughter, Emma, lay in the next room recovering from another round of treatments. Emma had a rare autoimmune condition that required constant medication and regular hospital visits. The bills were crushing. Sarah worked 2 jobs, one as a daytime receptionist at a dental office, another cleaning offices at night, and it still wasn't enough. Then Mrs. Wei had walked into the dental office. The elderly Chinese woman had kind eyes and had chatted with Sarah while waiting for her appointment. They'd talked about everything and nothing about New York, about family, about loss. Sarah had mentioned briefly that she was a widow. Her husband David had died 4 years ago in a construction accident, leaving her alone with Emma and a mountain of debt. Mrs. Wei had seemed genuinely interested, genuinely kind. When she left, she pressed a business card into Sarah's hand. "My grandson is a good man, but too busy," she'd said with a gentle smile. "He needs someone real, someone with a good heart." Sarah had thought nothing of it until 2 days later when her phone rang. A crisp, professional voice explained that Mrs. Wei had arranged a meeting opportunity with her grandson, Marcus Wei. The voice mentioned a weekend trip to a private island resort, all expenses paid, a chance to get to know each other in a relaxed environment. Sarah's first instinct was to refuse. It sounded absurd, possibly dangerous, definitely too good to be true. But then she'd looked at Emma, sleeping fitfully on their worn couch, her small face pale against the pillow. She'd looked at the eviction notice tucked behind the refrigerator magnet. She'd thought about the prescription she couldn't afford to refill next week. The voice on the phone had mentioned compensation for her time, win or lose. The assistant had said, "Mrs. Wei insists you receive $5,000 for the weekend. Consider it a consulting fee." $5,000. It was more than Sarah made in 2 months. It could cover Emma's medications. It could pay the rent. It could buy them time. So she'd said yes. She'd found someone to watch, Emma, her neighbor Rosa, who loved Emma like her own granddaughter. She'd borrowed a dress from her coworker Lisa because she owned nothing suitable for a weekend with a billionaire. And now here she was, 35,000 feet in the air, flying towards something she couldn't even imagine. The jet began its descent. Sarah's stomach lurched, though she couldn't tell if it was from the altitude change or from sheer terror at what lay ahead. She'd looked up Marcus Wei after agreeing to come. He was 38, a tech entrepreneur who built a software empire worth billions. His company, Wei Tech Solutions, developed medical software and AI diagnostic tools used in hospitals worldwide. He was handsome in his photos, with sharp features and darker eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. He'd never been married. The tabloids called him Manhattan's most illegible bachelor and speculated endlessly about his dating life. And Sarah? She was nobody. A 36-year-old widow with worn-out shoes, a daughter with expensive medical needs, and hands rough from scrubbing floors. What was she doing here? The jet touched down smoothly on a private airstrip. Through the window, Sarah could see brilliant turquoise water, white sand beaches and lush green mountains rising in the distance. Paradise, a place that existed in movies and magazines, not in her real life. "We've arrived at St. Lucia, ma'am," the flight attendant said warmly. "Mr. Wei is waiting at the resort. A car will take you directly there." Sarah stood on shaking legs, smoothed down her borrowed dress, and picked up her small overnight bag, the only luggage she owned. As she stepped off the plane into the tropical warmth, the sun bright and welcoming against her skin, she thought of Emma back home. She thought of the bills. She thought of all the reasons she'd come. But she also thought of something Mrs. Wei had said during their conversation at the dental office, something that had stuck with Sarah through all of this. Sometimes God puts us in impossible situations not to break us, but to show us what we're truly made of. Sarah took a deep breath of the salt-tinged air and walked toward the waiting car. Whatever happened next, she would face it with dignity. She would be honest. She would be herself. She had no idea that being herself was exactly what would change everything. The resort was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. The main building rose gracefully from the landscape, all white stone and soaring glass, surrounded by gardens bursting with exotic flowers in colors she couldn't name. A massive infinity pool seemed to spill directly into the ocean beyond. Staff members in crisp white uniforms moved quietly through the spaces, attending to guests with practiced invisibility. Sarah felt like an imposter. Her borrowed dress, nice enough in Queens, felt cheap and ill-fitting here. She clutched her small bag tighter as a concierge led her through an open-air corridor toward one of the restaurant terraces. "Mr. Cade, Wei is waiting for you," the young woman said with a professional smile. And there he was. Marcus Wei stood by a table overlooking the ocean, and Sarah's first thought was that the photographs hadn't done him justice. He was tall and lean, wearing cream-colored linen pants and a pale blue shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His dark hair was slightly tousled by the ocean breeze. He looked relaxed, confident, completely at ease in this paradise setting. Then he turned and saw her, and his expression shifted. Not disgust, not disappointment. Something else. Surprise, perhaps. Confusion. Sarah forced herself to walk forward, her chin up despite the fear churning in her stomach. "Mr. Wei," she said quietly, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah Chen." He took her hand, his grip firm and warm. "Marcus, please." His voice was deep, measured. "My grandmother has a gift for surprises." They sat down and an awkward silence stretched between them. A waiter appeared, describing dishes Sarah had never heard of, wines from regions she couldn't pronounce. She ordered the simplest thing on the menu and water instead of wine. She noticed Marcus watching her, studying her face. "I appreciate you coming," Marcus said finally. "I apologize if this situation is unconventional. My grandmother means well, but her methods are sometimes unorthodox." Sarah met his eyes. In that moment, she made a decision. She could pretend, could play along, could try to be someone she wasn't for the sake of $5,000 and a weekend in paradise. Or she could be honest. "Mr. Wei, Marcus, I need to be direct with you," Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm not who you're expecting. I don't belong here. I'm a widow with a 7-year-old daughter who has serious medical needs. I work 2 jobs and I still can't make ends meet. Your grandmother was kind to me at my workplace, and she arranged this trip. I came because," her voice cracked slightly, "I came because she offered to pay me for the weekend, and I desperately need the money for my daughter's medication." She stopped, waiting for anger or dismissal. Instead, Marcus leaned back in his chair, something shifting in his expression. The polite distance in his eyes softened. "What's your daughter's name?" he asked quietly. "Emma. She's 7. She has autoimmune issues. Her body attacks itself. The treatments are expensive, and insurance doesn't cover everything." Sarah swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. I'm sure you expected someone different, someone from your world. I couldn't lie to you." The waiter brought their food and they ate in silence for a few moments. The fish on Sarah's plate was the most delicious thing she'd ever tasted, but she could barely focus on it. "My mother died when I was 8, Marcus said suddenly. "Rare cancer, experimental treatments that didn't work. My father was an immigrant engineer, and he worked himself into the ground trying to save her. He looked out at the ocean. After she died, My grandmother raised me. She taught me that wealth means nothing if you forget where you came from. She taught me to see people, not their bank accounts. Sarah didn't know what to say. Marcus turned back to her. I've been on 100 dates with women who wanted my money, my connections, my name. They wore designer clothes and said exactly what they thought I wanted to hear. Not one of them told me the truth. He paused. You just did. I don't know how to be anything else, Sarah said simply. Tell me about Emma, Marcus said, and the genuine interest in his voice surprised her. So Sarah did. She talked about Emma's laugh, bright and bubbling like music. About how Emma loved to draw, creating elaborate pictures of magical gardens and friendly dragons. About how brave Emma was during hospital visits, never complaining even when the treatments made her sick. About the small apartment they shared, and how Emma would curl up next to Sarah at night, asking when Daddy was coming home, even though he'd been gone for 4 years. Marcus listened intently, asking questions, seeming genuinely engaged. He told her about building his company, about the pressure and the loneliness of success, about his grandmother's constant worry that he was becoming too isolated, too focused on work. She thinks I need balance, Marcus said with a slight smile. She might be right. The dinner stretched into hours. The sun set over the ocean in brilliant oranges and purples. Staff lit candles on the tables. And Sarah forgot to be nervous. She forgot to feel out of place. They talked like two people simply getting to know each other, sharing stories and laughs and quiet moments. When the meal finally ended, Marcus walked her to her suite, a beautiful room with a balcony overlooking the water. Tomorrow, no expectations, Marcus said at her door. Just enjoy the island. Let's have breakfast together, see where the day takes us. Would that be all right? Sarah nodded, a small smile on her lips. I'd like that. Back in her room, Sarah called Rosa to check on Emma. Her daughter was fine, sleeping peacefully. Rosa assured her everything was under control. After hanging up, Sarah stood on the balcony, listening to the waves, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not because of Marcus's wealth or status, but because someone had listened to her. Someone had seen her, really seen her, and hadn't turned away. She didn't know that, in his own suite across the resort, Marcus was making a phone call to his executive assistant. Pull everything we have on autoimmune treatments for children, he was saying. I want our medical AI team to review the latest research and get me the contact information for the top pediatric specialists in New York. Because Marcus Way had learned something his grandmother had been trying to teach him for years. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can offer someone isn't money. It's attention. It's care. It's seeing their humanity. And he had seen Sarah's. The next morning began with breakfast on another terrace, this one more intimate, tucked into the gardens where hummingbirds darted between bright tropical flowers. Sarah wore her other outfit, simple jeans and a white blouse, and felt more like herself than she had the night before. Marcus arrived in casual clothes, carrying 2 cups of coffee. I took a guest cream, no sugar, he said, offering her one. Sarah accepted it with a grateful smile. He'd guessed right. They spent the morning walking the beach, their feet bare in the warm sand, the turquoise water lapping at their ankles. Marcus asked more about Emma, about her treatments, about the specific diagnosis. Sarah noticed he listened with an intensity that seemed unusual, asking detailed questions about the medical terminology, the medications, the doctors they'd seen. I'm sorry, she said finally. I'm probably boring you with all this medical talk. Not at all, Marcus said quickly. My company develops medical software, diagnostic AI, treatment planning systems. I'm genuinely interested in how these conditions are being managed. As they walked, Sarah found herself opening up in ways she hadn't with anyone since David died. She talked about the loneliness of widowhood, about the guilt she felt when she was too exhausted to play with Emma after working double shifts, about the fear that gripped her every time Emma got sick, every time a new symptom appeared. The worst part isn't the money, Sarah admitted, staring out at the endless blue horizon. It's feeling helpless, like I'm failing her, like I can't protect my own daughter. Marcus stopped walking. Sarah, you're working 2 jobs to keep her healthy. You're showing up every single day. That's not failing, that's heroic. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels like drowning. Tell me about your husband, Marcus said gently, if you want to. So Sarah told him about David, how they'd met at a community college where they were both taking night classes, how David had worked construction to support them while Sarah finished her degree, how he'd been the one to paint Emma's nursery in soft yellow with careful hand-painted flowers on the walls, how he died on a construction site when Emma was only 3, a scaffolding collapse that had killed him instantly. He had life insurance, but it wasn't much, Sarah said, and medical bills from Emma's early diagnosis ate through it quickly. He'd want me to take care of her no matter what. That's the only thing that keeps me going some days. What Sarah didn't know was that Marcus was doing calculations in his head. Timelines, companies, construction sites, because 4 years ago, Waytech Solutions had been contracted to install systems in a new hospital building in Queens, and there had been an accident, a scaffolding failure. Investigations, settlements. Marcus's chest tightened. He needed to check something. That afternoon, while Sarah rested in her suite, Marcus made phone calls. He pulled records. He searched databases. And there it was, the connection he'd feared. David Chen, construction worker, killed on the Metropolitan General Hospital site, a site where Waytech had been the primary contractor for the medical systems installation. The scaffolding had been installed by a subcontractor that Waytech had hired. Marcus sat on his balcony, staring at his phone, feeling sick. Sarah's husband had died on a project his company had overseen. The legal settlements had been handled by lawyers and insurance companies. Marcus had never seen the names, never connected faces to the tragedy. It had been just another line item in a corporate liability report. But now it was real. It was David. It was Emma's father. It was the reason Sarah was alone and struggling. He should tell her. He knew he should. But how? How do you tell someone that your company, your project, was connected to the worst moment of their life? That evening they had dinner again, but Marcus was quieter, more withdrawn. Sarah noticed. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "Just some work issues," Marcus lied and hated himself for it. "Nothing important." They walked through the resort gardens after dinner, the air sweet with jasmine and night-blooming flowers. Sarah talked about Emma's dreams, how she wanted to be an artist, how she drew pictures of her father from memory, keeping him alive on paper. "She has a journal where she draws every day," Sarah said softly. "She calls it her daddy book. She writes him letters in it, tells him about her life." Sarah's voice broke slightly. She wrote in it that she wishes she could help Mommy stop being so tired. Marcus stopped by a fountain, its water catching the soft garden lights. "Sarah, I want to help." "You already have," Sarah said. "This weekend, this conversation, it's the first time in years I felt like a person, not just a survival machine. You've given me that. I mean financially," Marcus said. "Emma's treatments, the medications, let me help cover them." Sarah stepped back, her expression changing. "Marcus, no, that's not why I told you these things. I'm not looking for charity." "It's not charity. I appreciate the offer, truly." Sarah interrupted, her voice firm despite the trembling. "But I've made it this far on my own. I'll figure it out. I always do." She looked down at her hands. "I don't want you to think I'm here to take advantage. I don't want your money." "What do you want?" Marcus asked quietly. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I want Emma to be healthy. I want to stop being afraid all the time. I want to feel like there's a future that isn't just bills and exhaustion." She paused. "But I want to earn it. Through my work, my effort. I don't want handouts, even from someone as kind as you." Her dignity, her fierce independence, it made Marcus admire her even more. And it made his secret weigh even heavier. They said goodnight, and Marcus returned to his suite knowing he had to tell her the truth. Tomorrow. He would tell her everything tomorrow. The connection to David's death, the fact that his company bore some responsibility for her widowhood, the fact that this entire weekend had been built on a foundation of hidden connections neither of them had known about. He just hoped she would understand. He hoped she wouldn't hate him. Because in just 2 days, Marcus Way had discovered something that all his billions had never brought him. He was falling for Sarah Chen, for her strength, her honesty, her unshakable dignity in the face of impossible circumstances. And tomorrow, he might lose her forever. The third morning dawned with clouds rolling in from the ocean. turning the sky a soft gray. Sarah woke early, unable to shake a feeling of unease. She dreamed of David, of the phone call that had shattered her world 4 years ago, of standing in a hospital corridor while someone explained that her husband was gone. Marcus had suggested they have lunch at his private villa on the resort grounds. When Sarah arrived, she found him standing by the window, looking out at the turbulent water. He turned when she entered, and she could see something troubled in his expression. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Please, sit. We need to talk." Sarah sat on the cream-colored sofa, her stomach knotting with worry. "What's wrong?" Marcus sat across from her, his hands clasped together, his usually confident demeanor replaced with something that looked like pain. "I haven't been completely honest with you. Not intentionally. I only discovered this yesterday, but you deserve to know." He told her everything. About pulling the records, about the construction site, about Waytech's involvement in the project where David had died, about the scaffolding failure, the investigations, the settlements that had been handled through legal channels while Marcus focused on building his company and never looked at the human cost. Sarah sat frozen, her face draining of color as the truth washed over her. "Your company," she whispered. "Your company was responsible for David's death. The subcontractor we hired was responsible for the scaffolding. But yes, it was our project, our oversight. We paid settlements, but I never—" Marcus's voice cracked. "I never knew your name. I never knew about Emma. You were just case numbers and legal documents. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm so incredibly sorry." Sarah stood abruptly, backing away from him. "Is that why you've been so nice to me? Guilt? Trying to make up for killing my husband?" "No!" Marcus stood too desperate. "Sarah, I didn't know until yesterday. Everything before that, getting to know you, caring about Emma, that was real. That is real." "How convenient," Sarah said, her voice shaking with anger and pain. "How convenient that your grandmother just happened to meet me, just happened to arrange this trip. Was this all some kind of corporate cleanup? Pay off the widow, make her go away quietly?" "My grandmother doesn't know about the connection," Marcus said urgently. "I'm sure of it. She met you at the dental office by coincidence. She's been trying to set me up with someone genuine for years. This was just her latest attempt." "Coincidence?" Sarah laughed bitterly, tears streaming down her face. "My husband dies on your project, and 4 years later your grandmother befriends me and sends me to you? That's too much coincidence, Marcus. I know how it looks. You don't know anything." Sarah's voice rose, all the pain of 4 years erupting at once. "You don't know what it's like to get that phone call. To have to tell your 3-year-old daughter that daddy isn't coming home. To choose between paying rent and buying medication. To work yourself to exhaustion every single day and still fall short." She grabbed her bag, her hand shaking. "And now I find out that the man who's been so kind, so understanding, is the reason I'm in this nightmare in the first place." "Sarah, please." "The worst part," Sarah interrupted, tears flowing freely now, "the worst part is that I started to trust you. I started to hope. I thought maybe there was something good coming into our lives for once." She moved toward the door. "I was so stupid." "You weren't stupid. You're the bravest, most remarkable person I've ever met," Marcus said, his own voice thick with emotion. "What happened to David was a tragedy. Nothing I say or do can change that. But what's happening between us, that's real, Sarah. Please don't throw it away because of something I didn't even know about." Sarah stopped at the door, her hand on the handle. "I can't do this. I can't be here." She looked back at him, her face streaked with tears. "I need to go home to my daughter. Let me at least arrange the flight." "I'll find my own way," Sarah said firmly. "I don't want anything from you, Marcus. Not your money, not your help, not your guilt." She walked out into the gray afternoon, leaving Marcus standing alone in the villa, his heart breaking in a way no business failure, no financial loss had ever accomplished. Sarah made it to her suite before the sobs overcame her. She collapsed on the bed, crying for David, for Emma, for the brief moment of hope that had been torn away. A staff member helped her arrange a commercial flight back to New York. She refused to take the private jet. She wanted nothing that came from Marcus Way or his company. As she packed her small bag, her phone rang. It was Rosa. "Sarah, honey, Emma's been asking for you. She's okay, but she's not feeling well. Nothing serious, but she wants her mama. I'm coming home, Sarah said, her voice steadier now. I'll be there tomorrow morning. How's the trip? Rosa asked gently. Sarah looked around the luxurious suite, thought about the private jets and fancy dinners and the man who had made her feel seen and valued for the first time in years, the man whose company had destroyed her life. It's over, Sarah said simply. It's all over. That night, Sarah sat in the commercial airport terminal, surrounded by normal people heading home from normal vacations. She thought about David, about the last morning she'd seen him alive, how he'd kissed her goodbye and told her he loved her. She thought about Emma, waiting at home, her whole world contained in a sick little girl who depended on her, and she thought about Marcus, about the pain in his eyes when he'd told her the truth. Part of her believed him that he hadn't known. Part of her believed that his feelings had been genuine. But it didn't matter. The gulf between their worlds wasn't just about money or status. It was about responsibility and pain, and a loss that could never be repaid. She boarded the red-eye flight to New York, leaving the island and its impossible promises behind. What Sarah didn't know was that Marcus was already on the phone with his executive team. I want a full review of every safety protocol we've ever had. I want to know the names of every person who's been hurt on our projects. I want our AI team to develop predictive safety software that prevents accidents before they happen. And I want it all done right, regardless of cost. Because Sarah had changed him. In 3 days, she'd shown him what he'd been missing while building his empire. She'd shown him the human cost of corporate efficiency. She'd shown him what really mattered. And even if she never spoke to him again, he would honor what she taught him. He would make sure no other child lost a father because of his company's negligence. Sarah arrived home to find Emma running a fever. What had seemed like a minor issue to Rosa was actually the beginning of a flare-up. Emma's immune system was attacking her body again, more aggressively than before. Within 6 hours of Sarah's return, they were in the emergency room. The next week was a blur of hospital visits, tests, worried doctors, and medication adjustments. Emma's condition was deteriorating faster than the doctors expected. They needed to try a new treatment protocol, something experimental but promising. The cost was astronomical, $60,000, not covered by insurance. Sarah sat in the hospital financial office, staring at numbers that might as well have been written in a foreign language. $60,000. It might as well have been 60 million. We have payment plans, the counselor said kindly, and there are some charity programs you might qualify for, though the waiting list is long. How long? Sarah asked, her voice hollow. 6 to 8 months for a decision. Emma didn't have 6 to 8 months. The doctors had been clear. They needed to start this treatment soon, or her condition could become irreversible. Sarah went home that night after Emma finally fell asleep in her hospital bed. She sat in their small apartment, surrounded by the reminders of their life, Emma's drawings taped to the walls, David's photo on the mantel, the stack of bills on the kitchen table that had grown while she was away. She thought about Marcus's offer. Let me help. She'd refused out of pride, out of anger, out of a fierce need to maintain her independence. But what was pride worth if Emma suffered for it? She picked up her phone 3 times to call Marcus. 3 times she put it down. She couldn't. She just couldn't take money from the company that had killed David. It felt like a betrayal, like erasing what had happened. Instead, Sarah did what she'd always done. She worked. She picked up extra cleaning shifts. She sold what little jewelry she had. She started a fundraiser online that raised $3,000 from the kindness of strangers. She applied for every grant, every charity program, every possible source of help. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. 2 weeks after returning from the island, Sarah received a call from the hospital. Emma's doctor wanted to see her immediately. Sarah's heart stopped. Had Emma gotten worse? But when she arrived at the hospital, the doctor was smiling. Mrs. Chen, I have extraordinary news. Emma has been selected for a clinical trial of a new treatment protocol. It's being funded by a medical research foundation. The treatment is completely free, all costs covered, including any hospital stays, medications, and follow-up care. Sarah stared at her. I don't understand. We applied for trials months ago and were rejected. This is a new program, just launched. The selection committee reviewed Emma's case specifically and felt she was an ideal candidate. The foundation is very well funded and looking for patients who can benefit from cutting-edge treatments. What foundation? Sarah asked. The doctor checked her notes. The David Chen Medical Innovation Foundation. I believe they focus on families affected by construction industry accidents. Does that name mean anything to you? Sarah felt her knees go weak. David Chen, Emma's father. But David hadn't had any money for a foundation. Unless... When was this foundation established? Sarah asked quietly. According to this, just 2 weeks ago. It's funded by an anonymous donor who wanted to honor families like yours. Sarah sat down heavily in a chair. She knew exactly who the anonymous donor was. Marcus. He'd created an entire foundation in David's name. He'd set up a clinical trial. He'd done it all without asking for credit, without demanding gratitude, without any way for her to refuse without hurting Emma. Mrs. Chen, is everything all right? The doctor asked with concern. Yes, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. Yes, everything is. When can Emma start the treatment? Next week, if you consent. The trial director actually wants to meet with you tomorrow to discuss the protocol. He's flying in specifically to oversee Emma's case. That night, after Emma fell asleep holding Sarah's hand, Sarah finally called the number she'd been avoiding for 2 weeks. Marcus answered on the second ring. Sarah, he breathed, and she could hear the relief and longing in his voice. The foundation, Sarah said. The David Chen Medical Innovation Foundation. A pause. How did you... Marcus, you can't do things like this without asking. I can, actually, Marcus said gently. And I did. Sarah, I'm not trying to buy your forgiveness. I'm not trying to manipulate you. But I can't just sit here knowing Emma needs help, and I have the resources to provide it. That foundation will help dozens of families, maybe hundreds. Emma's just the first. Why David's name? Sarah asked, her voice breaking. Because he deserves to be remembered. Because his daughter deserves to benefit from something good that came from that tragedy. Because... Marcus paused. Because you taught me that wealth means nothing if you don't use it to honor the people who built what you have. Every hospital that uses our software, every life saved by our technology, it's built on the labor of people like David. It's time his name was on something that matters. Sarah sobbed openly now. I don't know what to say. Say you'll let Emma get the treatment. That's all I ask. You don't have to talk to me. You don't have to forgive me. Just let me do this one thing right. I'm scared, Sarah admitted. I'm scared of accepting help. I'm scared of what it means. I'm scared that I'm betraying David by taking anything from you. You're not betraying anyone, Marcus said firmly. You're being a mother. You're choosing your daughter's health. David would want that. I know he would. How can you possibly know that? Because I've spent the last 2 weeks reading about him, talking to his former co-workers, his old friends. Everyone says the same thing. He lived for his family, for you and Emma. He'd move heaven and earth to protect you both. Marcus's voice softened. Let me honor that. Let me make sure his sacrifice means something. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of David's face, his smile, his hands building Emma's nursery. What would he want? The answer came clearly, as if he were standing beside her. He'd want Emma healthy. Everything else is just noise. Okay, Sarah whispered. Okay, Marcus. Emma will take the treatment. Thank you, Marcus said, and she could hear the emotion in his voice. Sarah, I need time, Sarah interrupted gently. I'm grateful, more than I can express, but I need time to process everything, to figure out what this all means. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. After hanging up, Sarah went to Emma's room and watched her daughter sleep, her small chest rising and falling peacefully. Tomorrow would bring new treatments, new hope. Tomorrow would be the beginning of healing. And maybe, someday, Sarah would be ready to heal too. Not just Emma's body, but Sarah's heart. 3 months later, Emma's transformation was remarkable. The new treatment protocol was working beyond anyone's expectations. Her color had returned, her energy was back, and for the first time in years, she was living like a normal 7-year-old child. She attended school regularly, played with friends, and drew pictures that were full of sunshine instead of shadows. Sarah had quit her night cleaning job, and was able to spend evenings with Emma again. The foundation covered all medical expenses, and they'd even moved to a better apartment, nothing fancy, but a safe neighborhood with a good school. Sarah could breathe again. She hadn't spoken to Marcus since that phone call 3 months ago, though she'd received regular updates from the foundation about Emma's progress. The updates were always professional, never personal, giving Sarah the space she'd asked for. But as Emma's 8th birthday approached, Sarah found herself thinking about Marcus more often, about their conversations on the island, about the kindness in his eyes, about how he'd listened to her story as if it mattered, about how he'd created something beautiful from something tragic. Emma had been asking about him. She'd overheard enough to know that Mr. Marcus had helped with her treatment, and in her child's heart, she wanted to thank him. "Mama, can we invite Mr. Marcus to my birthday party?" Emma asked one evening while drawing another picture for her daddy book. "Honey, Mr. Marcus is very busy, but he made me better," Emma said simply, with the uncomplicated logic of childhood. "We should say thank you." Sarah looked at her daughter, at the health blooming in her cheeks, at the life that had been returned to her eyes. Emma was right. Some things were more important than pride or fear or complicated histories. Sarah sent Marcus a text message, the first communication she'd initiated in 3 months. "Emma's birthday is next Saturday. Nothing fancy, just cake and friends at our apartment. She'd like you to come. If you're available, 2 p.m. No pressure." The response came within minutes. "I'd be honored. Thank you for the invitation." The day of the party, Sarah was a bundle of nerves. She'd cleaned their modest apartment until it gleamed, baked Emma's favorite chocolate cake, hung streamers that Emma had helped choose. A dozen children from Emma's school were coming, along with Rosa and a few neighbors who'd become like family. Marcus arrived exactly at 2, carrying a wrapped present and looking decidedly out of place in jeans and a simple sweater, the most casual Sarah had ever seen him. When Emma answered the door, she looked up at him with wide eyes. "Are you Mr. Marcus?" she asked. "I am," he said, kneeling down to her level. "And you must be the famous Emma. Your mom has told me so much about you." "You helped make me better," Emma said seriously. "Thank you." Marcus's eyes glistened. "You're very welcome, Emma. Happy birthday." The party was chaos in the best way, children running around. Games, laughter, cake fights, and joy. Marcus sat on the floor with the kids, playing their games, admiring their drawings, telling silly jokes that made them giggle. Sarah watched him from the kitchen, seeing a side of him she'd never witnessed. He wasn't a billionaire or a tech mogul. He was just a man making children laugh. After the other guests left, and Emma was playing with her new toys in her room, Sarah and Marcus found themselves alone in the kitchen, cleaning up plates and cups. "She's wonderful," Marcus said softly. "You've raised an incredible daughter." "Thank you for coming," Sarah said. It meant a lot to her, to both of us. Marcus set down the plate he was holding and turned to face her. "Sarah, I've respected your space for 3 months. But I need to tell you something. I'm in love with you." Sarah's breath caught. "I fell in love with you on that island," Marcus continued, "with your strength, your honesty, your fierce love for your daughter. And these past 3 months of not talking to you have been the longest of my life." He took a step closer. "I'm not asking you to love me back. I'm not asking you to forget what happened to David. I'm just asking for a chance. A real chance to show you that what I feel is real." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I've been so angry at you, at the universe, at everything. You have every right to be. But here's the thing," Sarah continued. "Emma is healthy because of you. The foundation you created is helping other families. I've read the reports, seen the stories. You took something horrible and made something good from it. That matters, Marcus. It's not enough to bring David back." "No," Sarah agreed. "Nothing will ever do that. But maybe." She paused, searching for the right words. "Maybe healing doesn't mean forgetting. Maybe it means honoring the past by building something better for the future." Marcus waited, not pushing, just present. "I think about you too," Sarah admitted quietly. "More than I should. More than I want to sometimes. Because it feels complicated and messy and real," Marcus offered. Sarah smiled through her tears. "And real. "So where does that leave us?" Marcus asked gently. "I don't know," Sarah said honestly. "I think it leaves us taking things slowly, getting to know each other without the pressure of private islands or desperate circumstances. Just coffee? Maybe dinner sometimes? Spending time together with Emma?" "I'd like that," Marcus said. "I'd like that very much." Emma appeared in the doorway, holding one of her drawings. "I made this for you, Mr. Marcus." It was a picture of three people holding hands, a little girl in the middle, a woman on one side, and a man on the other. Above them was a sun, and in the corner, a figure with wings. "That's my daddy," Emma explained, pointing to the winged figure. "He's watching from heaven. Mama says he'd be happy I'm better." Marcus knelt down, accepting the drawing with trembling hands. "This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me, Emma. Thank you." "You can be our friend," Emma said simply. "Mama needs friends. She's always sad when she thinks I'm not looking, out of the mouths of babes." Sarah laughed, wiping her eyes. "Thank you for that, sweetheart." Over the next several months, they did exactly what Sarah had suggested. They took it slow. Coffee on Saturdays while Emma was at art class, dinners at casual restaurants where they talked for hours, trips to the zoo and the museum with Emma, where Marcus learned to see the world through a child's eyes again. Marcus introduced Sarah to his grandmother, who smiled knowingly and said, "I knew you were special the moment I met you." Sarah introduced Marcus to her world, to Rosa and her neighbors, to Emma's school, to the community that had supported her through the darkest times. Marcus didn't try to fix everything with money. He showed up, he listened, he helped pack lunches and attended school plays and sat in hospital waiting rooms during Emma's follow-up appointments. One year after Emma's birthday party, on a quiet Saturday afternoon in Central Park, with Emma feeding ducks nearby with Rosa, Marcus turned to Sarah on their bench. "I want to spend my life with you," he said simply. "Both of you, if you'll have me." Sarah looked at Emma, laughing and happy and healthy. She thought of David, of the love they'd shared, of the family they'd started to build. She didn't feel guilt. She felt gratitude for what she'd had and for what she was being offered now. "David will always be Emma's father," Sarah said. "Always." "I know," Marcus said. "I'd never try to replace him. But I'd be honored to help raise his daughter, to love her as my own." And the foundation will continue, growing stronger every year. David's legacy will help thousands of families. Sarah took Marcus's hand, feeling its warmth, its strength, its promise of partnership rather than rescue. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Marcus. Let's build a life together." Emma came running over, holding a feather she'd found. "Look, Mama, it's perfect." Marcus lifted her up, spinning her around as she giggled. "Just like you, Emma, just like both of you." They walked through the park together, a family built not from simplicity, but from loss and healing and the courage to try again. Sarah had learned that accepting help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Marcus had learned that wealth meant nothing without humanity, and Emma had learned that love could expand, that her heart was big enough for the father she'd lost and the family she was gaining. The story that had begun with such pain had transformed into something beautiful, not because the pain disappeared, but because they chose to honor it by building something meaningful from the ashes. This story reminds us that life's most precious connections often emerge from our darkest moments. Sarah's journey teaches us that true strength isn't about refusing help, it's about accepting it with dignity. Marcus's transformation shows us that wealth without compassion is empty, but resources guided by love can change the world. The most powerful lesson? Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring our losses by building hope for tomorrow. It means choosing courage over comfort, honesty over pretense, and love over fear. Sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead us exactly where we need to be. Sometimes broken roads lead to beautiful destinations. Sometimes the person who changes your life shows up when you least expect it and changes their own life in the process. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that remind us of our shared humanity. And remember, your struggles don't define you, but how you rise from them reveals who you truly are. Leave a comment telling us what lesson spoke to you most. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, may you have the courage to be vulnerable, the wisdom to accept kindness, and the strength to build something beautiful from whatever life brings your way. God bless you all.